You know what I'm saying? We most definitely in the building, man. Look like some more things have been going on in Minnesota, y'all. I'm just saying, man, it's a lot of chaos going on in Minnesota, and it look like it ain't getting no better, man. I'm just saying, y'all. Lord have mercy, man. Uh, Most definitely had JD Vance, guys, show up to Minnesota and have to give a speech, man. Not to mention, that the protesters been going at the head of ICE, man. He most definitely was down there as well. Mayor Fry, basically spoke on the subpoenas that Trump sent out. One was for him as well as JD Vance being in town. Some of the protesters who stormed that church, guys, well, I ain't gonna say some, one of them that I know of, basically has been arrested, y'all. And remember, Pam Bundy that was looking to pursue a lot of charges. Look like the courts ain't going along with what she's putting down either, man. I'm telling y'all, it's crazy, man. You know what I'm saying? Make sure you double tapping that screen. That's how you hit the like button, or you can click the three dots, hit that thumbs up. Somebody out there, let me know if y'all can hear me, man. You know what I'm saying? If you're in the bushes, most definitely let me know if you can hear me out there by typing. I can hear you, or we can hear you in the chat, guys. Let me know y'all can hear me out there. We up with it early, man. We up with it early. I need to know if y'all can hear me out there. Somebody type something, let me know that y'all can hear me, man. Can y'all hear me out there? We up with it early. Already, Jet James, thank you for letting me know that you can hear me. I wasn't sure if you could hear me out there, man. You know what I'm saying? So let's get to some of this breaking news, man. You know what I'm saying? Let's get to some of this breaking news early this morning, guys. You know what I'm saying? We most definitely in the building, man. One of the most informative channels on YouTube, y'all. You know what I'm saying? Let's start with them going after. Hold up, let me stop this music. We're gonna start right here. With the ICE protesters basically surrounding BP chief, which is ICE chief Greg Bavano, and dumping chips on him, man. They ain't playing no games, man. What's up, y'all? What's up, Jet James? What's up, Gwendy Williams, man? If you're not subscribed to this channel, make sure you subscribe to the channel, man. Most definitely double tap that screen, hit that like button. It helps out the channel. Yeah, man, and enjoy the show. So we starting out with the people in Minnesota acting up, the protesters anyway, as they surround the chief of ICE, man, and dump chips on him. Let's start here. Let's go.
As the protests continue, former ICE Special Agent Tim Miller joins me now. Okay, any idea what will stop these violent protests?
Well, I tell you, Stuart, you and I have had this conversation. How about this? How about we comply with the laws that the people put in place? How about the police department does its job? How about the leadership at the state level and the mayor level begin to comply? It's ironic to me, Stuart. Law enforcement is the most regulated occupation in the country. Body cameras all the time. From the time they begin their training, they're trained to protect our constitutional, grants and privileges that we have. And it's interesting, the other side is the opposite. They continue to violate our laws, enter sacred spaces, and this madness will continue until the law is enforced with the cooperation of the police and the leadership.
Are there known criminals?
Guys, let's make sure we double tapping that screen. That's how you hit the like button, or click the three dots, hit that thumbs up. It helps out the channel. I most definitely would appreciate it. Make sure y'all are liking the content, guys. This is protesters basically surrounding the chief of ICE, man, and throwing chips on it.
Those guys and women with DUIs, but vicious criminals in prison, in a jail in Minneapolis, and ICE is not allowed to go get them. And they're illegal aliens, and ICE can't go get them, and they're in prison. Is that the case?
Yeah, and the scary part about that, and we saw that with the judge, the issue of the judge allowing an immigrant to slip out the back, when they're in custody, and that's the way we did it when I was an agent. We cooperate with law enforcement. It's a controlled environment. It's safe for the officers. You go serve the detainer that you have, and everything flows. But these folks have decided that all the constitutional guidelines don't apply. They don't have to cooperate. And I'll tell you, Stuart, it's horrifying to me that the police have turned their backs on fellow law enforcement. I live in Florida. I talked to a Palm Beach County sheriff, and I said, "How are you guys doing?" And he smiled and said, "We follow the law. Everything's fine."
Next one, Tim. ICE launched a new operation in Maine during the first day of the initiative. The worst of the worst were arrested. Multiple illegals convicted of crimes like aggravated assault, false imprisonment, endangerment of the welfare of a child. Now, why are people protesting ICE when ICE removes criminals like this? The Maine operation sounds like a real success.
Yeah, and that's the scary part to the propaganda coming from the left. ICE is under clear constitutional guidelines for how they do what they do. It's always reviewed judicially. They're simply doing what should be done according to the majority of the American people. And to your point, I don't know if you saw the video of the ICE agent saying, "Hey, we're here to arrest a convicted child molester, and you guys are in the way." That's the question I would ask. Yeah. What do you gain by signing up for a cause that is designed to keep all of us safer from people like this? It's mind-boggling.
It is. One more for you, Tim. Anti-ICE protesters surrounded the Border Patrol commander, Greg Bovino. They dumped a bag of chips on him. How are agents supposed to work?
Pour chips like on them, guys.
How are they
Make
supposed
sure you
to
double tapping that screen,
when they're being
most definitely like
to their face with vile comments and insults? How are they supposed to respond?
Well, and Stuart, that's such an important point. By the way, kudos to Vice President.
Surrounding the chief of ICE.
To the Vice President for going there, and to the President for the administration's support of law enforcement. To your point, I talked to these guys. They're tired. This is not what they signed up for, to go to work every day, to have their families doxxed, simply for doing what their job calls for them to do. And to your point, there's no restrictions from the left in terms of their violence.
Wow.
And crossing every civility boundary. And, it really reminds you that this is a fundamental choice between the rule of law and the rule of chaos and destruction. And Americans need to see through this. I think they do, and realize, man, if there's ever a time to stand with law enforcement, it's now.
Well, a real fast question. If I've got a bottle of water and it's iced, it's like a chunk of ice, and I chuck it at ice and it lands and I get arrested, do I go to jail, or am I going to be released?
Thank you for the gift.
Yeah, you certainly should go to jail. In Florida, you'd absolutely go to jail, but you wouldn't have ice in the bottle. But you'd absolutely, that's a crime, to assault a federal agent in the performance of their duties. The problem is,
pouring chips on an ICE agent is assaulting him. Oh, wow. Man, hold your breath when ICE come around. Don't breathe on them. They'll charge you with assault.
Once again, it goes back to, if you have elected leaders that refuse to honor their constitutional duties, and you have an entire police force that turns their back on fellow law enforcement agents and refuses to support them, let me tell you, Stuart, we're in trouble as a nation if that's allowed to continue.
That's a real breakdown. It is. Tim, thank you very much for being with us.
All right, so that was a little bit on the ICE chief. That's what I call him. Basically getting chips poured on his head. Protesters are acting a fool in Minnesota. It don't look like it's gonna get no better as they schedule more protests for the weekend. It's gonna be cold, but I guess they used to it, guys. All right, moving right along. Now, y'all remember that the protesters stormed the church, right? And I'm guessing that Don Lemon, is that his name? Don Lemon was a part of it. Well, it says Minnesota judges rejects charges against Don Lemon over anti-ICE church protests, guys. So they threw the case out of court. I don't know how Pam Bundy gonna feel about that, but they most definitely threw it out. Check this out.
For you is from this post, Bill Melugin on X from Fox News, saying multiple sources tell me and colleague David Spunt that the federal judge in Minnesota who refused to sign off on an arrest warrant for Don Lemon is Douglas Micko, and that his wife works as an assistant attorney general in Minnesota, AG Keith Ellison's office. So this all comes on really a video that went viral over the weekend of the incident that happened of a storming of a church in Minnesota. A federal judge rejected the Justice Department's initial attempt to bring charges against journalist Don Lemon for appearing alongside.
They said, hey, man, we ain't filing no charges against this guy. We need to do better on that like button, guys. Simply double tap that screen if you're on a mobile device, or click those three dots in the right-hand corner. Hit that thumbs up. It helps out the channel. I will most definitely appreciate it, you guys, as I bring y'all the latest and breaking news, man, the updates on what y'all been watching, you know, and everything going on, man. Double tap that screen. That's how you hit the like button, or click those three dots, hit that thumbs up, and most definitely subscribe to the channel if you're new. So a Minnesota judge, a judge basically rejects, you know, them trying to press charges, the police trying to press charges on Don Lemon for what happened at that Minnesota church, guys.
Protesters who breached a Minnesota church over the weekend there. So there have been multiple arrests already, and I think a lot of people were waiting to see if Don Lemon's name was going to be added, and that was not the case, at least so far, at least. So let's now bring in our next guest to help break it all down here for us. A friend here of Live Now from Fox, Nima Rahmani, former federal prosecutor. Always great to have you on, Nima. So explain the moment here as federal prosecutors tried to get this for Don Lemon. How does this go about?
Mike, really surprising that federal prosecutors would pursue a case and not even clear probable cause. That's a very low standard. I mean, we've seen it recently with this Department of Justice going to the grand jury and being unable to get an indictment. And here, there was a magistrate judge that said there's not enough probable cause to issue an arrest warrant and arrest Don Lemon. Of course, he's a former CNN anchor, now a reporter who was present there. We've all seen the viral videos from this Sunday with protesters disrupting the proceedings. The question is this unlawful? And there's really two different federal statutes that the three individuals who have been arrested are being charged on. The first is deprivation of civil rights.
Yeah, I heard him say three of the individuals, you know, that basically stormed that church, and some of the organizers have been arrested, you know, for storming in that church in Minnesota.
And the civil rights here being the freedom to practice one's religion. You have competing factors here. Obviously, you have the First Amendment on one side, allows for freedom of speech, which includes the freedom of protest, as well as the freedom of religion. And then there's a second act that's being charged, not typically used, it's called the FACE Act. That's the Freedom of Access to Clinical Entrances Act. It's typically used for abortion clinics, but it also applies to houses of worship. So certainly an escalation by the Department of Justice, and it's pretty clear in Minnesota and elsewhere, they're going to take a very aggressive stance against these ICE protesters to the extent that they believe that they're engaging in something more than protected activity and speech, and they're obstructing the enforcement of federal law.
Now, Nima, if this incident happened in a more Republican favorable state, would it have been a different story for Don Lemon?
Well, potentially, yes. And again, this is where the judge matters. But the problem with a case like this is, look, if you're the Department of Justice, you don't want to bring cases unless you're going to win. And they've suffered a series of setbacks recently. When you're a federal prosecutor, typically, historically, you know, you don't bring a case unless it's bulletproof, it's ironclad. You don't want to be going to court and losing. You're expected to win every time. And I understand the policy reasons why you want to send a message and protect ICE agents who are enforcing federal law. I understand these laws are unpopular, but if you don't like the law, right, your member of Congress changed the law. I do believe that ICE has the right to enforce the law, just like the protesters have the right to make their voice heard, as long as they're not engaging in obstruction or unlawful conduct. But the fact that you have a judge here who...
All right, so Well Informed says, what happened to the separation of church and state? Guess that doesn't include the feds, huh? I guess not, my guy.
Doesn't believe there's probable cause with respect to one defendant, Mike, that doesn't bode well for the chance of getting a guilty verdict at trial. You have to convince 12 out of 12 jurors unanimously, beyond a reasonable doubt, the highest standard in the law. One of the individuals who was arrested today, Armstrong, she is a pretty prominent civil rights activist, also an attorney. This is not the type of case that's going to plead out. And again, I have concerns about this case because there's some ready-made defenses here. You have the First Amendment, of course, but you also have the argument that there's no criminal activity. There was no force, there was no threats, there was no intimidation, there was no unlawful agreement to deprive someone of their civil rights, which is required for conspiracy. So it's going to be a very tough case for the DOJ if they do intend to pursue it all the way.
And Nima, lastly, what do you think was the hang-up for the judge not to see or find the probable cause when there was others that were able to get arrested? What do you think that was?
Mike, I think probably one of the big deals, this is a reporter, right? Here's someone who is present, and obviously we know.
All right, they saying that the separation of church and state, well informed, is not a real thing. That's what they say.
You know, the First Amendment protects reporters in this country. It's a very strong defense, you know. And when it comes to speech, we really need to separate speech, even if it's unruly, from criminal conduct. You generally need something more to prosecute someone. Now, there are certain instances where you can make a threat, and that threat is criminal. But short of that, you know, if you are disruptive, you maybe can be prosecuted for trespassing. But these are very significant charges here. The civil rights charges carry potential 10-year sentence in federal prison. The FACE Act, if there's violence, carries a potential.
Shout out to Miss T for being a member for the last 15 months. She says, Mahel, subscribe. Make sure y'all subscribe, like, and share the content, guys.
11-year sentence in federal prison. So a judge is probably looking at this saying, hey, here's someone who's a reporter. Here's someone who's disagreeing with ICE, which is his American constitutional rights. I have a concern with this case being prosecuted when there's a very strong defense there. I don't think there's enough probable cause, and that's the judge's role as a gatekeeper.
So they saying basically it wasn't enough to basically charge Don Lemon, guys. He's been let off the hook, but like he just said, Armstrong was most definitely arrested, guys. Here's a little bit more on that situation. Check this out.
Feels like it is growing. What did you think about the interview from the jail?
Yeah.
Can we take it seriously?
Here's the thing. Obviously, she has an incentive to say what she's saying. She's looking at 30 years. She's very involved with this. The danger for the people she's talking about, Waltz, Fry, Ellison, and others, is the fact that she can serve as a pointer. Whether we choose to believe her or not, it comes down to will a grand jury, or ultimately, if it goes to trial, a petit jury, a jury of her peers, 12 people, potentially believing her testimony relative to these other people. But when you have somebody like this that was on the inside, we always called it in intelligence a pointer. She's there to tell you as you go through a mountain of emails, a mountain of communications, which we know they serve subpoenas to get. Those subpoenas for
Shout out to Miss Karen for being a member for the last 18 months. She says, let's go. Shout out to you. Thank you.
Documents, right, including electronic documents. As you ferret through a mountain of stuff, if you have a quote-unquote pointer to say, no, forget about that, look over here, saves you a lot of time. It helps focus the investigation. And sure, they might have to cut a deal so that she has less time in order to testify and all of that, but that's how cases are made. Anybody who's ever seen a mafia movie knows that.
It seems like a weak defense. I kept asking, they kept giving, and it's their fault, not mine.
She's not getting out of it.
By the way, 250 million stolen allegedly. About 75 million has been recovered. So there's a lot of money out there that someone has illegally. Now we got some breaking news, Paul. I want to get to that on a Fox News alert because moments ago, remember that church incident on Sunday in Minneapolis? The AG Pam Bondi posted this. All right, I'm reading now. Minutes ago, at my direction, HSI and FBI agents executed an arrest in Minnesota. So far, we've arrested okay, we'll come back to that. So far, we have arrested Nikema Levy Armstrong, who allegedly played a key role in organizing the coordinated attack on City's Church in St. Paul, Minnesota. We will share more updates as they become available. Listen loud and clear. We do not tolerate attacks on places of worship, end quote. I want you to react to that, Paul. But on Monday, Trish McLaughlin was on with Dana and me. And part of her answer said, I think we will be seeing mugshots very soon. She was tipping her hand at a restaurant.
All right, so this is Armstrong right here. If y'all remember the last time I was live, I showed y'all when they were holding the press conference asking for the church pastor, you know, basically to step down, guys, because they felt like he was affiliated with ICE and that he was condoning the things that ICE was doing in Minnesota. Well, they have locked her up, guys. She is currently in jail.
On the way, and this is the first one that's been made.
Yeah, I mean,
look,
right there. There's going to be very, very...
Y'all remember her? That's her right there. They have locked her up, guys.
Little that they can do in defense of this because it's on film, and for once they didn't cover their faces. Now here is the thing that's going to come out of this. You have her under arrest. Now you're going to get the communications, and this is where it starts to spider web out. You start to see who's talking to who showed up in regard, including Don Lemon. How much did they all know going in? That imports things like conspiracy charges, which can be quite heavy. There's criminal civil rights charges that are implicated in the church incident.
This is also because one of the things that we found out about that was that they were targeting them because they were privileged white supremacists.
We talked about that earlier in the
Wow.
week. Not only did that come out in the video and that they said something like that in the church, but then after the fact, Lemon talks about exactly that, putting a racial overtone in the whole thing, which potentially could import a hate crime. So this
There's
was
another
really
thing
badly
about this.
done.
The woman that they've just arrested, I talked a little bit about this on the 5 yesterday because Cam Cawthorn, he writes for Fox Digital, and he had a piece about her. So she's been doing professional protesting and organizing for a long time. She gets a lot of grants from different nonprofits, and she's always made more money than she has spent. So, like, there's a financial incentive for her. There's a business model for these types of things.
All right, so we got her right here. It says basically who is Nikita Levy Armstrong, involved in disruptions at City Church St. Paul, former president for the NAACP, Minneapolis, former professor of law, University of St. Thomas School of Law, advisor to Black Lives Matter, BLM, charged with multiple misdemeanors related to participation in 2014 Black Lives Matters protests. Oh my goodness.
Thanks.
We've talked about this really since I've been on the network. One of the things that I've tried to sort of bang the gong on that I think a lot of police who do investigations see that the public doesn't see is that there is a career protester. And it has developed over the last, let's say, dozen years or so into a very lucrative industry. And you have people who do this for a living, make a ton of money. Yes. They weaponize people who don't know any better. And to use the Leninist term, useful idiots. They're looking for any cause in the world. They get them out of the campuses. They grow those groups and those institutions. And then they pick out people who want to stay in that world, who don't go back to East Cupcake and get a job eventually after college. They stay in that. They become the middle management, and it grows and it grows. It's very much like any other industry. The problem with it is if you dig down deep enough, you find out that there's tax money going into all of this stuff.
Keep in mind, she said so far, so that would indicate more to come.
There's more coming.
Thank you. I mean, trespassing at a minimum. I mean, you were not invited in. That's not your property.
At the state level, where's the minute? Well, by the way, this is St. Paul. Where's the St. Paul chief of police?
Fair point.
I'm Steve Ducey. I'm Brian Kilby.
All right, guys, if y'all haven't took time to like the video, double tap that screen, get the likes up. We done had over 1,000 people in the building, and we only got 50 likes, guys. Let's get the likes over 100. Double tap the screen if you don't mind, or click those 3 dots and hit that thumbs up. All right, another breaking news. I found out that J.D. Vance, your vice president, most definitely took a trip to Minnesota, guys, and basically spoke on everything going on there. Let's check this one out. Man, get the likes up. Let's get them over 100, guys. Let's most definitely support the channel by hitting the like button. I ain't asked you for any money, not one coin. Only thing I asked you is to hit that like button, man. Double tap that screen if you have not, or click those 3 dots, hit that thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel if you are new. This is what J.D. Vance had to say, you know, on his visit to Minnesota, and basically how he feels about what's going on there. Get the likes up, guys. Double tap that screen, man. We only at 72. We need more likes, man. We need 100 on the board ASAP. If you haven't hit that like button, double tap that screen or click those 3 dots, hit the thumbs up. It helps out the channel, or I wouldn't keep on asking you to do it. Let's go.
A shout out to the Annunciation school shooting families, because the last time I was in Minneapolis, it was of course to meet with some of those families, and I understand that a couple of the students have made near miraculous recoveries, and just that was a very special moment for me to be invited into that community at a time of grief. And I hope that all of them know that though I didn't get to see them this particular time, I've been thinking about them and their families quite a bit. Now, to talk about what I am here to do, which is federal law enforcement to enforce our immigration laws, I want to say just a few things. First of all, I wanted to meet with business leaders, with ICE officers, with local law enforcement to try to understand a little bit better what's going on so that we can tone down the temperature a little bit, reduce the chaos, but still allow us as a federal government to enforce the American people's immigration laws. That is the purpose of my visit. Now, this is step one or step two of that process. There's going to be a lot of work that follows through from here. I'm happy to talk about that, but I think I learned a few things that were very important. So number one of the things I learned is that the guys behind me are doing an incredible job, and frankly, a lot of the media is lying about the job that they do every single day. Now, it doesn't mean that there aren't occasionally stories out there, there aren't occasionally videos out there that suggest that these guys, or at least some of the people who work for them, are not doing everything right. But very often, if you look at the context of what's going on, you understand that these people are under an incredible amount of duress, an incredible amount of chaos, and because of a few very far left agitators, a lot of these guys are unable to do their jobs without being harassed, without being doxxed, and sometimes without being assaulted. That's totally unacceptable. And that's one of the things that I want to send a message to is, yes, come out and protest me, protest our immigration policy, but do it peacefully. If you assault a law enforcement officer, the Trump administration and the Department of Justice is going to prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law. And I wanted to show some support for these guys who, frankly, are operating in a very, very tough environment. I heard a lot of stories today about that I think drives home just how chaotic the environment on the ground here has already gotten. For example, did you know that within the last, I think, week or so, maybe even more recently than that, you had a couple of ICE officers who were off duty, who had been doxxed online, who were sitting and having a meal at a restaurant in Minneapolis when a bunch of agitators showed up, locked the door, made them feel like they were in danger for their lives. And then, of course, it was federal law enforcement officers who had to come up, lower the temperature on the situation, and actually get those two off-duty officers to a point of safety. Now imagine, if you would, your life and your perspective on law enforcement if you can't even go to a restaurant without some agitators locking the door and making you feel like your life is in danger. That is the environment that has been created, I think, by a lot of very, frankly, far left people, but also by some of the state and local law enforcement officials who could do a much better job in cooperating and working. And by the way, I'm not talking about the cops, who these guys told me on the ground, the cops are very sympathetic to what they're dealing with. I'm talking about the state and local elected law enforcement officials who could do a lot better job in making their lives a little bit easier. And in the process, they would make the lives of all Minneapolis residents easier. And that's what we want. We want to be able to enforce the immigration laws on the one hand, while on the other hand, we want to make sure that people in Minneapolis are able to go about their day. And I want to say just one last point on this. So I heard from a business leader today who told me a very tough story. And I think so much of what's gone wrong in Minneapolis.
Make sure you guys are getting them likes up. Double tap that screen if you have not. That's how you hit the like button if you're on a mobile device, or you can click the three dots, hit the thumbs up, guys. It helps out the channel. This is JD Vance speaking on how he feels about what's going on in Minnesota, guys.
Is people not trying to understand the perspective of somebody else. Try to understand what somebody else is experiencing, whether they're a law enforcement officer or anybody in the community here in Minneapolis. So they told me a story about this manufacturing facility where an illegal immigrant was being arrested. And as these employees are going into the manufacturing facility, all of a sudden an illegal immigrant shows up. They don't know it's an illegal immigrant. And then a bunch of ICE officers descend. Now, these people just want to go to work. They want to go to work safely. And now all of a sudden, there's a major law enforcement operation happening right outside their place of business. Now, from one perspective, I certainly understand why a business leader or why an employee would say, whoa, what's going on? It's a little scary, no matter your position in life, if a bunch of cop cars show up and they're arresting somebody. Now, the additional context is that we know that people online have been encouraging illegal immigrants that one way they can evade arrest is by showing up at a legitimate place of business, making it impossible for these guys to actually enforce our immigration laws. So while I can understand the perspective of somebody who doesn't want to see an arrest happen at their place of work, I can also understand the perspective of our immigration enforcement officers who have to do their job and can't allow a heckler's veto over our immigration enforcement. And so much of what's gone wrong is the failure to do that. And here's the point. We can do a good job of enforcing our immigration laws without the chaos, but it actually requires the cooperation of state and local officials. If you look at blue cities and blue states, red cities and red states, you go to Austin, Texas, or Memphis, Tennessee, you go to the state of Texas, obviously a very red state, or the state of Tennessee, a very red state, but you've got blue cities within those states, you do not have this level of chaos. The reason why things have gotten so out of hand is because of failure of cooperation between the state and local authorities and what these guys are trying to do. We have a ton of resources, a ton of ICE agents in this city right now that I would rather us not have. I'd love to send those guys home. They're not even doing targeted immigration.
What do y'all think about what J.D. Vance is saying right now, guys? Are y'all agreeing or disagreeing with what he's putting down? Let me know in the comments.
Enforcement, they are trying to protect ICE officers who are doing immigration enforcement, because when a crowd surrounds them and these guys call 911, the local officials, the local cops have been told to stand down. So we have people here who aren't even doing immigration enforcement, they're doing force protection. So that if a rioter tries to ruin the life or assault an ICE officer, they're actually protected. Now, why doesn't it make more sense for the local cops to get involved in that situation? Why not just have the mayor or the local officials tell the police officers, you know what, if an ICE officer is being assaulted by a far left agitator, you are invited, you should actually help them. That's what would work out in any normal situation, and that's what happens in nearly every jurisdiction, red or blue, in the United States of America. The reason it hasn't happened here is because the local authorities have been told, stand down, do not help ICE, promote the violence, promote the agitation, but don't do anything to lower the temperature and lower the chaos. That's a problem. Here's another example of how the lack of cooperation between state and local officials makes it harder for us to do our job and turns up the temperature. Let's say, for example, we have a criminal migrant who is a sex offender. And let's say that we've got to go and arrest that person who, Democrat or Republican, wants a sex offender living in their community. I would assume, I would hope that most people don't. But because they're an illegal alien, we don't know their last address. We may have known their address 3 years ago, but we don't know their address now. What we'd like to do is talk to local officials and say, you know what, according to the Medicaid rules, where was the last address this person was domiciled? Or according to a SNAP application, a food stamps application, maybe that could give us insight to where this person is today. Or maybe they had some local court trouble. We could go to the local courthouse or even the local jail and try to find where this criminal sex offender is today. The local authorities have been told, do not cooperate. So these guys are trying to go out and enforce the law. They're trying to arrest sex offenders, but they're trying to do it in an environment where local officials have been told, do not help them, do not provide intelligence about where these sex offenders might be. This is disgraceful. And there are a lot of things that all of us could do better to lower the temperature.
I think we all understand about the ones that are violence and ex-offenders. We're trying to figure out what's going on with the ones that are not. Why are y'all messing with them? That's what y'all need to let us know.
But the number one thing that I learned today is that the best way to facilitate reasonable enforcement of the law, but also to lower the chaos in Minneapolis, would be for state and local officials to cooperate. Now, I will say, on one final positive note, I actually think that there's some hope, some reason to think that there's going to be better cooperation in the weeks and months to come. I think that because I've talked to some of the local officials here, I think there are reasons to believe that these people are going to step up and actually ask the cops to protect our ICE officers when they're being assaulted, who are going to ask the local courts to cooperate with getting criminal sex offenders out of our community. That's a good thing. That's the good news, and that's something I'm going to work on when I get back to Washington. But please, if you're a local official, if you're the mayor of this town, if you have any influence over those people, just tell them to cooperate. because we could have immigration enforcement operate as smoothly.
Let's get those likes up, guys. If you're on a mobile device, double tap that screen or click the 3 dots, hit the thumbs up. It helps out the channel. Hit the like button, guys. Hit the like button and subscribe if you're new.
And without the chaos that we see in Austin, Texas, or Memphis, Tennessee, or even rural parts of the state of Minnesota, all we need is a little cooperation. I guarantee we're going to do the best to be professional, to respect people's rights, to not do anything that we don't have to do in order to enforce immigration laws, but it would make our lives a lot easier, it would make our officers a lot safer, and it would make Minneapolis much less chaotic if we had a little bit of cooperation from the state and local officials. With that, I'll shut up and take some questions. Thank you, guys.
Vance, a local school district here is alleging ICE agents detained a 5-year-old after preschool on Tuesday. We've also seen multiple American citizens detained by ICE in the last 6 weeks. Are you proud of how your administration is conducting this immigration crackdown here in Minnesota?
Well, I'm proud of the fact that we're standing behind law enforcement, and I'm proud of the fact that we're enforcing the country's laws. But, you know, you asked a question about this 5-year-old kid. I actually saw this terrible story while I was coming to Minneapolis. We just left Toledo, Ohio this morning for an economic messaging event. And I see this story, and I'm a father of a 5-year-old, actually, a 5-year-old little boy. And I think to myself, oh my God, this is terrible. How did we arrest a 5-year-old? Well, I do a little bit more follow-up research. And what I find is that the 5-year-old was not arrested, that his dad was an illegal alien. And then when they went to arrest his illegal alien father, the father ran. So the story is that ICE detained a 5-year-old. Well, what are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to let a 5-year-old child freeze to death? Are they not supposed to arrest an illegal alien in the United States of America? If the argument is that you can't arrest people who have violated our laws because they have children, then every single parent is going to be completely given immunity from ever being the subject of law enforcement. That doesn't make any sense. No one thinks that makes any sense. Now, you know, there are so many of these cases like that where if you just understand the context, there have been a number of situations that I've looked into personally where I say, wait a second, we don't want ICE arresting American citizens. They're supposed to be enforcing the immigration laws against the
But they are. Why aren't y'all stopping them, JD?
illegal aliens. So then I look into it and I find out that the American citizen who was arrested took a swing at an ICE officer. You can't have that happen. And of course they have to defend themselves. And of course they have the right to detain somebody who assaults a law enforcement officer. Now, this is my point. Do we want these things to happen? Do we want these arrests to be so chaotic? No, we don't. These guys want it least of all, but if we had a little cooperation from local and from local and state officials, I think the chaos would go way down in this community.
President!
Go ahead.
After the Renee Good shooting, sir, the administration seems to say...
Yeah, well, you can go next.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I'll take both.
After the Renee Good shooting, sir, the administration seems to... After the Renee Good shooting, the administration seemed to suggest that ICE officers enjoyed near complete immunity. But today you told the Washington Examiner that when appropriate, the administration might take disciplinary actions against ICE agents. So is that a change in opinion? And if so, why the change in tone?
No, I didn't say, and I don't think any other official within the Trump administration said that officers who engaged in wrongdoing would enjoy immunity. That's absurd. What I did say is that when federal law enforcement officers violate the law, that is typically something that federal officials would look into. We don't want these guys to have kangaroo courts. We want them to actually have real due process, real investigation, because again, sometimes they're accused of wrongdoing, and it turns out when you learn the context, they didn't actually do anything wrong. But of course, we're going to investigate these things. Of course, we're investigating the Renee Good shooting, but we're investigating them in a way that respects people's rights and then ensures that if somebody did something wrong, yes, they're going to face disciplinary action, but we're not going to judge them in the court of public opinion.
If you disagree with what Vance is saying right now, double tap that screen and hit the like button. You know, if you agree with what Vance is saying, double tap that screen and hit the like button. Or click the 3 dots, hit that thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel if you're new.
Looking at length on this particular case, I think that Renee Good's death is a tragedy. I also think that she rammed an ICE officer with her car. So the tragedy here is multi-layered. The tragedy is there was a misunderstanding. The tragedy is that Renee Good lost her life. The tragedy is that you have ICE officers who are going into communities where they're worried that if they call 911, no one's going to come to help them. That is what produces this terrible situation, and it's something state and local officials here in Minnesota could solve. Yes, sir.
Could you give us a message towards George for life tomorrow, especially in regard to this cooperation and training values? It's a shame that kids have to get caught up in all this, and towards that, sir.
Well, it is a shame that kids have to get caught up in this. I am speaking at March for Life tomorrow. I'm pro-life, and I'm very excited to speak there. I want to talk about local law enforcement, but I am. As a child, I saw people in my family get arrested. It's terrible. It's heartbreaking, it's chaotic, it's traumatic for the kids. I can recognize that, and I can recognize that we got to support these kids, while on the other hand saying that just because you're a parent doesn't mean that you get complete immunity from law enforcement. And I think we have to hold both of those thoughts in our head at the same time. We've got to be sympathetic to the kids who are caught up in some of these enforcement actions. We've also got to say we have to enforce the law without bias, with fairness, but we've got to enforce the law.
Mr. Vice President!
And she screamed at him.
And their mayor said they had incurred about this thing in the city, and how this is kind of proactively working with local agencies, those policies, and curious on that.
You said there was an altercation in St. Cloud. Yeah.
The mayor said that ICE did not communicate with them there in the city from your operation.
What JD got going on with his hair, guys? He got brownish black hair down here, grayish brown is black. And then right here, it's like extremely brown. And up there, it's extremely brown. What is going on with your hair, buddy? I'm just saying. You need to dye everything the same color.
Yeah, it's one of the takeaways. I've talked with these guys before we came on the stage, but during our roundtable and some of the other conversations we've had, communication, we absolutely want to ensure there's good communication between federal officials and state and local officials, and I'm sure that we can do better on that. We absolutely want to make sure that we are communicating, but that also requires a two-way street, and that's the point that I make about state and local officials. These guys will absolutely communicate with state and local officials. They'll tell people if they have to do an enforcement operation in a particular municipality, but part of that is they also want to ensure that if they're communicating about their whereabouts, that's not being used as a weapon against them. Sometimes they tell people where they're going, and then they find out that their agents' faces are on on Reddit or on some social media thread saying, here's this guy, we know he's going to be at this place at this exact time. So that communication has got to be a two-way street. These guys are going to communicate with business leaders, with local officials, with state officials, but we also need the local officials and state officials to do a good job of protecting people when they're in their communities. We're not asking, by the way, we don't want any police officer in this community, in this state, to help us do immigration enforcement. We've got that. But if a protester shows up and that protester turns violent against our immigration officers, we really, really need the cooperation of our local partners. We haven't gotten it yet, but I think if we do, we really can lower the temperature. Yeah.
Somebody said nothing but lies.
Yeah, so I saw that story, and the story is like so much that I read in the mainstream media. It's missing a whole lot of context, and when you appreciate the context, it makes sense. No one is saying, look, there are exceptions. For example, a crazy exception, if somebody is fired at from inside a house, they don't need a warrant to go inside that person's house. There are very narrow exceptions to the warrant requirement where law enforcement officers don't need a warrant if, for example, they're an imminent threat of their lives. But what we've said and what ICE has proposed, what the Department of Homeland Security really has proposed in the Department of Justice, is that we can get administrative warrants to enforce administrative immigration law. Now, it's possible, I guess, that the courts will say no, and of course, if the courts say no, we would follow that law, but nobody is talking about doing immigration enforcement without a warrant. We're talking about different types of warrants that exist in our system. Typically what happens, not always, but typically in the immigration system, those are handled by administrative law judges. So we're talking about getting warrants from those administrative law judges. And then, of course, with other cases, you get judges or you get warrants from a judge. That's very consistent with the practice of American law. I'm sure the courts will weigh in on that, but we're never going to enter somebody's house without some kind of a warrant, unless, of course, somebody's firing on an officer or they have to do something in order to protect themselves. Go ahead.
We need 14 more likes, guys. Double tap that screen. You know what I'm saying? That's how you hit the like button if you're on a mobile device. So click the 3 dots, hit that thumbs up. All right, so JD Vance most definitely has a certain type of way that he feels about all of this. And I see a lot of y'all down there disagree, saying that he's lying. You know, I don't know. I'm going to continue listening. Double tap that screen, man. Get the likes up. We need 7 more likes, guys. Double tap the screen. Shout out to Ballin for being a member for the last 15 months. He said we are on the road to 60K subs, so help be a part of that and sub. This is the best news show on YouTube. You won't be disappointed. Absolutely, guys. Shout out to everybody that hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're new.
Would that be a violation?
Well, our understanding is that you can enforce the immigration laws of the country under an administrative order if you have an administrative warrant. That's what we think. That's our understanding of the law. That's our best faith attempt to understand the law. Again, this is something courts will weigh in on. I won't speak to that. But yes, most immigration law in our country is not done through the criminal system with the judge. It's done through the administrative law system. We're going to continue that practice just as they did in the Biden administration or any other administration.
Was there anything that you heard or saw today that would cause the president to invoke the Insurrection Act? And then also, did you meet or talk to the ICE agents involved in the incident?
I did not talk to him today. I talked to some of his colleagues. Your question on the Insurrection Act is interesting. I've tried to understand this as well as I possibly could. And my understanding is what the Insurrection Act, what invoking the Insurrection Act would allow the federal government to do is that it would allow the federal government to use the military for local law enforcement operations.
Yes, which is not good, according to some Americans, guys. They say they do not want the U.S. military on their public streets, guys. The Insurrection Act basically gives them the right to put U.S. troops on U.S. soil. That's a sticky situation.
Right now, we don't think that we need that. Now, the president could change his mind. Of course, things could get worse. But right now, we think that federal law enforcement officers can do the job of federal law enforcement. Now, what I do worry about, again, is if the chaos gets worse, if more and more ICE agents start getting assaulted, if other law enforcement officers start getting assaulted, that would be a real problem. But again, we have so much federal law enforcement resources here right now. We have so many people here that we do not want to have here. I do not want so many ICE officers in Minneapolis right now. I mean, good Lord, it's really, really freaking cold outside. But they're here not even to enforce immigration laws, but to protect the people from the rioters. That's an absurd state of affairs, and we wouldn't need it if we had a little bit more cooperation from the Minneapolis Police Department. Again, the Minneapolis Police Department, my understanding is that the actual beat cops on the ground, they would love to help out, but they're being told by somebody. I don't know if it's Mayor Frey. They're being told by somebody not to cooperate at all. What kind of a person tells their local police don't protect somebody if they're being assaulted?
They don't want y'all there. They want y'all gone, man. They don't want y'all in Minnesota. Basically, that's what that is. Shout out to that $20 from Old Town. Says, look at Ian Omar. Her net worth went up over 20 million in 1 year. Please explain this. Thank you. I can't explain it. That's up to them. But I appreciate the donation for the $20. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I most definitely did see something about her and how much money she's worth the other day, man. We might have to look more into that, my guy. Let's go.
By a rioter, it's crazy and it's got to stop. Yes.
Earlier this week, local law enforcement accused federal agents of racial profiling. Why are there some agents being caught up in this operation?
Well, I think your question assumes something that's not necessarily in evidence, which is that when there are American citizens who have been caught up in some of these enforcement operations, very often it is people who have assaulted a law enforcement officer. They're not being arrested because they violated the immigration laws. They're being arrested because they punched a federal law enforcement officer. That is a totally reasonable thing. Now, to the accusation of racial profiling, look, it's something that we take very seriously. We will take accusations of racial profiling back to Washington. We'll certainly look into them as they come up. But this is not a group that's going around and looking for people who violated the law based on skin color. They're looking for people who violated the actual law, the law of our immigration system in this country. And so long as we had more cooperation, I think they could do these things in a much more targeted way. They would actually know where some of the bad guys are. I mean, again, you hear things that are hard to believe, but I've confirmed that they're true. Sex offenders who we're trying to get off the streets, who the local officials won't tell us their last known address. So then the local officials say, oh my God, these guys are doing widespread targeted enforcement operations, when in reality, we would love to just go to one house. The local officials won't tell us which one house to go to.
Mr. Vice President. To that question, the local police chiefs have said their own off-duty officers, so police officers, are being targeted because they are a person of color and asked to show their papers. Is that a concern of the administration of the Department of Homeland Security? If local law enforcement says their own officers...
Are y'all believing what he's putting down, guys?
Civil rights violations in our streets.
So I saw one story about this and one local police officer who said this, and look, certainly is it a concern? Absolutely. The first thing we have to figure out is whether it happened or not. And then if it happened, whether there is a good explanation or a bad explanation. And of course, if somebody violated the law, if somebody racially profiled, if somebody violated the rights of one of our fellow citizens, that is something we will take very seriously. What I also would say is that many of the most viral stories of the past couple of weeks have turned out to be, at best, partially true. So we want to try people based on reality, based on the truth, based on context. We're not going to prejudge people just because of viral social media story that turned out to be half false.
Mr. Vice President, quick question.
Thank you for the gift, Orlando.
That happened. Did you invite anybody with an opposing point of view to get an idea of why people are upset here? And just as a quick follow-up, have you reached out to Governor Walz at all in an attempt to turn down the ticket?
So I haven't talked to Governor Walz on this particular trip. A number of members of our administration, I believe our chief of staff, spoke to the governor and has been in constant contact with his staff over the past week. We've been in my office in constant contact with people here on the ground in Minneapolis. There were certainly people at our roundtable with opposing views, and look, I don't even know, whether it's public, but yes, we met with people with opposing views here at the roundtable. I wanted to get a perspective from everybody, but also, of course, offer my opinion that with a little bit more cooperation, we can lower the chaos. We're going to keep on doing that. If Governor Walz wants to call me, we'll absolutely continue talking. I will say that my sense of this situation, having talked to these guys for a long time, is this is primarily a law enforcement issue. This is the Attorney General. This is the local mayor. This is all of the organs of local and state law enforcement. That's who we focus on, but we've certainly been in communication with the governor and his office as well.
Vice President.
Yeah.
Local law enforcement obviously hasn't been really helping out with the agencies that assault repeatedly. What's the plan if nothing changes there here locally and this operation has attracted thousands of agents? Are there any plans to go to any other cities from here?
Well, right now we're focused on Minneapolis because that's where we have the highest concentration of people who have violated our immigration laws. And that's also, frankly, where we see the most assault of our law enforcement officers. I mean, our plan is very simple. If you assault a federal law enforcement officer, we're going to do everything that we can to put you in prison. It's very simple. And most of these protesters, as much as I may disagree with their politics, most of them have been peaceful, but a lot of them have not been peaceful. And if you go and storm a church, if you go and assault a federal law enforcement officer, we're going to try very hard. We're going to use every resource of the federal government to put you in prison. Respect people's rights. Respect people's rights to worship. Respect people's rights to do their job without being assaulted. If you follow that basic principle, the Trump administration is going to do everything that we can to protect your rights. But if you go after somebody, if you assault somebody, if you make a 9-year-old girl cry because you walked into her church and harassed her, we're going to go after you with every single tool that we have.
Vice President.
Your administration has said repeatedly this is about safety, about making Americans feel safer. So what do you say to people here in Minnesota who say it's the overwhelming presence of ICE officers and federal officers and their tactics that are making them feel less safe?
Well, one thing I would say is, first of all, we saw in 2025 the biggest one-year drop in murders in the history of the United States of America. Significant reductions in violent crime. The reason why we have less violent crime is really two reasons. Number one, because we're enforcing the immigration laws and getting very violent criminals out of our country. And number two, because we're enforcing our criminal laws and putting guys who assault and murder behind bars. This is part of a broad effort to make us safe. And the chaos that people are seeing, and I understand there is frustration of the chaos, I'd say that we're doing everything that we can to lower the temperature, and we would like federal and local, or excuse me, state and local officials
Brenda.
to meet us halfway. So much, so.
Perceiving it correctly? Are you saying that they're not seeing that it's the tactics or the presence of the officers that are...
Look, I'm sure that people are seeing a lot of things that would make any member of our national community feel very upset, but I also think that if you understand this in context, this is the inevitable consequence of a state and local government that have decided that they're not going to cooperate with immigration enforcement at all. In fact, they're going to aggressively not cooperate. So here's a basic illustration of this. If you are an ICE officer and you have to arrest a person who's committed assault and is also an illegal alien, but the state and local officials won't help you identify that person, many of the things that people in Minneapolis are seeing that give them pause, that frustrate them, that worry them, that make them feel like things are too chaotic, many of these things are coming from the fact that there's no cooperation with state and local law enforcement. And I guess what I would tell people, again, many of whom are justifiably concerned and worried about what they're seeing in their communities, is why are we not seeing it anywhere else? We're seeing this level of chaos only in Minneapolis. LA and Chicago, we had some problems there. Pretty much every jurisdiction where these guys are operating, you don't see the same level of chaos. You don't see the same level of violence. You don't see the problems that we're seeing in Minneapolis. Maybe the problem is unique to Minneapolis, and we believe that it is. And it's the lack of cooperation between state and local law enforcement and federal law enforcement. Sir.
ICE has been operating here for years with less pushback than we're seeing right now. And even the St. Paul police chief recently said, is there not a way to find common ground without scaring the hell out of people in the community? Those were his words. And I just wonder, with this Operation Metro Surge, is any part of it meant to send a form of political message to the leaders here in Minneapolis and the state of Minnesota? And I know you talked about you've been in touch with the governor's offices and the mayor's offices, but why have you not been able to speak to them directly? Have they not been willing to do so?
Well, look, I have spoken to some of the people in Minnesota directly. I spoke to some of them today. I've spoke to others in the past. And again, our staff has been in very direct contact with pretty much every official with any influence or any power in Minneapolis. But no, we're not trying to send a political message. We're trying to enforce the law. And unfortunately, what has happened is that as we've enforced the law, there's been this weird reaction, again, unique to this city. This is not a common thing across the United States of America. There's been a very unique, very Minneapolis-specific reaction to our enforcement of federal immigration laws. What I'm trying to do here today is understand why that is. What is it about Minneapolis that has become so chaotic? What are the specific types of cooperation that we need? Look, I don't need Tim Walz or Jacob Frey or anybody else to come out and say that they agree with J.D. Vance or Donald Trump on immigration. I just don't need that. What I do need them to do is empower their local officials to help our local or help our federal officials out in a way where this can be a little bit less chaotic and it can be a little bit more targeted. Like if we're trying to find a sex offender, tell us where the guy lives. Simple things like that, simple changes in how they're approaching immigration enforcement would make this work a lot better. It would make Minneapolis's streets a lot safer, and it would make this whole thing a lot less traumatic for this community. I'll take one more question.
Mr. Vice President.
You said that it's time to turn down the temperature. Does that include changes to both ICE and CBP tactics that we've seen employed on the streets, including less than lethal tactics, pepper spray, pepper balls? Beyond that, what is the federal government's role in turning down the temperature? And the Minnesota Department of Corrections says that its own officers have been cooperating with ICE all along, handing over criminals once they serve their sentences to ICE officials. And you can see that there is some cooperation with the state.
Yeah, look, if I was going to list the 5 agencies locally and statewide that I'm most worried about, I wouldn't put the Department of Corrections on that list. I think that while there are certain things we'd like to see more from them, they've hardly been the worst offenders. You agree with that, guys? That's a fair assessment. But I think you talked about tactics and you talked about the response to things. Look, we don't want to employ tactics that we don't want to employ the kind of tactics that are only necessary when violence is committed against officers. That is these guys' directive, and that's what we're going to try to do. And again, you see, the president said this a couple of days ago. Whenever you have a law enforcement operation, even if 99.99% of the guys do everything perfectly, you're going to have people that make mistakes. That is the nature of law enforcement. What I do think that we can do is, working with state and local officials, we can make the worst moments of chaos much less common. And all they've got to do is meet us halfway. These guys want to communicate with them. They want to talk to the local business leaders. Many of these guys, many of the people standing behind me are members of the Minneapolis community. Many of the officials that I met today who work in federal immigration enforcement, this is their home. They love this place. These are their neighbors. They want this to work a lot more smoothly. I think that we can get there. We just got to work at it a little bit, and we need some cooperation from state and local officials. The last thing that I'll say is I just hope they give it. This is a beautiful city. I've only been here a few times. I love it. Even in this weather, I love Minneapolis. We could do a lot better. We could do a lot more with more cooperation. The Trump administration, the directive that I got from the President of the United States is meet these guys halfway. Work with them so that we can make these immigration enforcement operations successful without endangering our ICE officers, and so that we can turn down the chaos a little bit, at least. I think a lot, actually. But for us to do that, we need some help from the state and local officials. We will keep on working with them, and so long as they're willing to work with us, they will always find a partner in public safety and law enforcement in the Trump administration. Thank you all.
All right, so that was J.D. Vance, guys, live in Minnesota. Y'all heard what he had to say about, basically them needing cooperation from the leaders of Minnesota, right? Well, Trump recently issued a subpoena, basically for some of the high-ranking leaders in Minnesota. One of them being Mayor Fry, guys. Well, guess what? You know what I'm saying? He responded to J.D. Vance, basically being in Minnesota, and how he feels about, these subpoenas. Check this out.
Good afternoon. So it sounds like J.D. Vance is taking a whole lot of my talking points, but not all of them. He said, quote, come out and protest, but do it peacefully. That sounds exactly like what I've been saying since the very first moments following the shooting of Renee Good. Protest peacefully, but don't take the bait. Don't counter the chaos of Donald Trump with our own brand of chaos here. And so, to the extent he's telling people to protest peacefully, we're in agreement. Second, and quote, we want to enforce the laws on one hand, while on the other making sure people in Minneapolis are able to go about their day. It sounds a lot to me like he wants to be mayor of the city, he's only been here for 2 hours, whereas we in this city have been working through these issues and this chaos for the last several weeks. Peace is not spraying irritants and chemicals at peaceful protesters. It's not detaining a 5-year-old. It's not dragging a pregnant woman through the streets. You achieve peace by working directly with communities. You lower crime by strategically going after people that have committed it. The vice president said he would love to be able to send some of these agents home. There's no disagreement there. We've been encouraging that for weeks. You heard me say it 2 weeks ago, and I've been saying it every single day since. If you're looking for an antidote to many of the issues that we have faced over the last several weeks, there's a very easy answer. And it's for this huge influx of federal agents, ICE and Border Control, to go home. And finally, he said if we had a little cooperation, we'd be able to keep the streets safe. Once again, we agree. We have extensively worked with federal agencies under both Democratic and Republican administrations. We've worked with the DEA and the FBI. We've worked with the ATF and the U.S. Attorney's Office to successfully drive down crime in Minneapolis, and we've done so by strategically focusing on people that have actually committed serious and violent crimes. So what's changed? What's changed is the response that we're seeing. What's changed is that we have 3,000 plus ICE agents and Border Control that are on our streets without a clear plan. What's changed is we've got this huge influx of what feels like an occupation in a city in the upper Midwest. And what's changed is that they are arresting United States citizens. They are detaining people that have done nothing wrong. They're going after people exclusively based on the fact that they look like they're Somali or they look like they are Latino, and no reason beyond that. They've stopped law enforcement officers that are off duty. They've stopped fathers that are on their way just to drop off their kids. There are incredible people in our city that have come from a variety of different places around the country and around the globe. And they've made our city a better place. They're part of our family. We love them. We're proud to have them here. So I get that they've got a messaging challenge here, and it's predominantly because anybody can see with their own two eyes what's going on. You can't say with a straight face that pulling citizens off the street or going into a school is a targeted action when clearly it's not. Clearly, what we are seeing on our streets right now is discriminating only on the basis of race and largely indiscriminate thereafter. So yeah, in Minneapolis, we want to solve crime. We want to arrest murderers. Let's do it. Let's work together to drive down crime. Again, this is not that. We have had relationships with a number of federal administrations to successfully drive down crime. What we are seeing is this is more about political retaliation. This is more about tragically terrorizing people than it is about safety, than it is even about immigration. So, the job of law enforcement is to keep the peace, to keep Americans safe, and that is literally what I signed up to do and what the federal government signed up to do as well, and I urge that they do exactly that. With that, I'll answer any questions you might have.
Great. Earlier today, Vice President Vance, had said that you're not being cooperative. He had implied that there had been some order to prevent local police from responding to federal agents. Can you comment on that? Has any local official told police not support agents?
What Vice President J.D. Vance is saying is he's rhetorically asking what makes Minneapolis different. What makes Minneapolis different is that we have an influx of 3,000 federal agents on our street, and we're not the size of New York City or Los Angeles. What makes us different is we're seeing constitutional violations play out in real time. What makes us different is, yes, we do have residents that are beautifully standing up, supporting their neighbors, providing food, escorting them to their jobs, recording some of the unconstitutional acts that are taking place to make sure that some sunlight is added as a disinfectant to some of the chaos that is being caused. And to your question, we have a separation ordinance, which is widely publicized, is nothing new. We had one well before this operation started taking place, and that separation ordinance says that our police officers and public officials do not work with any federal agency around immigration enforcement work specifically. We do work.
So basically he's saying, hey man, I'm not telling the officers to do nothing. I'm not telling them to help y'all. We don't even like y'all. We don't even want y'all here. Let's go fry.
With federal agencies to catch murderers. And so if they want to catch murderers, that's what we're for. And it doesn't matter if they're from Minneapolis, Chicago, Venezuela, Germany. It doesn't matter where the murderer is from. We're getting them because they're a murderer, not based on where they grew up. That's the way this should have worked in America. What our separation ordinance also says, and I say this to everybody throughout the city, is that we will not ask the question in Minneapolis as to whether a person is documented or not. Why? Because when you call 911, we want everybody to know that our first and primary concern is not your papers, but it's your safety. That's what we are focused on. Now, our police officers respond to any instance where they can help keep people safe. We have responded. We have arrested people. You've seen it. You can report it. Where safety has been compromised, our officers have stepped in to help. But I'll tell you exactly what I want our officers doing. We have 600 of them. They got limited time. I want them focusing their energies on investigating crime, on keeping people safe, on preventing carjackings and homicides. I don't want them spending time hunting down a guy, a dad, who has done nothing wrong, who just dropped his kids off at daycare, who's about to go work a 12-hour shift. That guy makes our city a better place.
Mayor, your reaction to J.D. Vance saying that the military is not needed here in the state?
Yeah, totally. So my reaction to J.D. Vance saying that the military is not needed in our state, yeah, wildly agree.
Mayor, what would improved communication with federal authorities look like to you?
Well, so the question is, what would improved communication with federal authorities look like to me? Give me a call. You know, if J.D. Vance can, feel free to reach out. We didn't get an invite, maybe unsurprisingly, to hang out while he was in town. We have done a whole lot of work through a number of different channels, including the channel of an email to seek an audience to try to figure out how we can stop this from happening and how we can keep our city safe. Again, I want to be really clear here. There is a route forward if we're all willing to see it. If their goal is to keep Minneapolis safe from criminals that are doing bad things, we agree. Regardless of where those criminals are from, we want to make sure that they are held accountable and that we're able to keep our city safe. And so there's broad agreement around that. For all of these other people, though, that have done nothing wrong, that are these wonderful members of our community, why not a path to citizenship for them? That makes all the sense in the world to me.
Mayor, what do you make of the vice president meeting with Republican state lawmakers and neither you or the governor?
So the question was, what do I make of the Vice President Vance meeting with Republican lawmakers, but not me nor the governor? I mean, the question that I have is, again, is this political performance that is taking place in our city that is compromising our safety?
They crazy.
Or is this trying to achieve an end goal that is improving safety in Minneapolis? Is this political performance? Is this partisan politics? Is this loving your ideology more than you love your country? Or is this trying to get something done for the sake of the American people and for the sake of the people of Minneapolis? I appreciate, the vice president said a couple nice things about the beautiful city that we have. And I agree, we have one. It's incredible. I'm so inspired by the people here in our city. And look, we got to find every possible way right now, again, as he said, to end this large-scale deployment and send these agents home.
One more question.
Is there any room for compromise between the city and ICE?
The question was, is there room for compromise? Look, I'll work with anybody that is willing to work in good faith with me.
Do you want to comment on
Yeah, so do I want to comment on Nikema Levy Armstrong's arrest? It's a gross abuse of power, and she should immediately be released.
Really quickly,
I'll do one more, and then I'm going to get going.
Vice President Vance said if there's cooperation between state and local officials, these many ICE agents would not be needed to carry out enforcement operations. What's your response to that? Is that something you're open to, that open line of communication to get these thousands of ICE agents out of the city?
Well, you don't need to. So the question is, the room for cooperation between the federal government and the state or in the city. You don't need to take my word for it. You can see it in the numbers coming straight out of corrections, which is a state agency, in the way that they have worked together. You don't need to take my word for it. You can see it in the numbers where we've successfully driven down shootings on the north side to a record low by working with federal agents in the U.S. Attorney's Office and our police officers that are, by the way, working tirelessly to arrest perpetrators of violent crime. So, look, we have done that. But again, I need to be really clear. That is not this. If this were about getting murderers, we would be able to do that. The number one question that we ask when we're trying to get a murderer is, are you a murderer? Is this a murderer? Not, where are you from? Where are you from is not the point here. The point is there a crime, a violent crime that has been committed? And of course, we've partnered extensively on that front. And so, again, let's just be really clear. Let's be really straightforward. I deeply appreciate all the work that the press has done just to uncover the facts and the truth so that we're not, like, talking by one another. I'm grateful to all of you, and thank you so much.
All right. So we heard from Mayor Fry, who basically said, hey, if this was a situation where they were only hunting down violent criminals, hey, I would tell the police department, man, work with these guys with no problem. But since they're going after ordinary citizens in our sanctuary city, I will not be telling them to basically, you know, go help ICE, you know. However you feel about it, he said what he said, y'all. All right, so there was another situation that was touched on just a little bit earlier about what I seen that ICE has a 5-year-old in custody, guys. A 5-year-old. Check this out.
Force the law, they're trying to arrest.
Protest dubbed the Day of Truth and Freedom as state leaders continue to push. Protest dubbed the Day of Truth and Freedom as state leaders continue to push back against the Trump administration's immigration efforts.
Madeline Rivera is live in Washington with all the details. Hi, Maddie. Good morning, Carly and Todd. Organizers of today's protest are calling for a pause in economic activity. So that means no work, no school, no shopping, as they demand ICE to stop their operations in Minnesota. The protest comes a day after Vice President J.D. Vance visited Minneapolis, blaming state and local officials for the unrest in the city.
The local authorities have been told, do not cooperate. So these guys are trying to go out and enforce the law. They're trying to arrest sex offenders, but they're trying to do it in an environment
now, y'all
where
heard
local
what he
officials
said,
have been
right?
told, do not help them.
They trying to get violent people and ex-offenders. Well, why do y'all got a 5-year-old? I wonder how, if the 5-year-old can be an ex-offender or unaliver. I'm just saying, I'm not getting why you got a 5-year-old.
Provide intelligence about where these sex offenders might be. This is disgraceful. And there are a lot of things that all of us could do better to lower the temperature.
Meantime, acting ICE Director Todd Lyons is giving more details about the 5-year-old boy who was taken into custody by immigration.
This is the 5-year-old boy that was taken into custody, guys, by ICE, man. I'm wondering how violent this 5-year-old can be. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying, I'm wondering how violent this 5-year-old can be. Why would you take a 5-year-old into custody? I'm trying to see. What do y'all think about this? I'm trying to see something. I'm just saying. Hey, I don't know. Maybe he acted up at school, you know, getting on the teacher's nerve and had to go with ICE. That's all I can come up with.
Agents. The photo has made the rounds on social media.
The target of this operation was this boy's father. They went to pull the car over, and the father ran. He abandoned that child. So our officers and agents, they stayed behind with that poor 5-year-old who was frightened at the time because his dad just took off and ran. We took both of them into custody. You know, the dad opted. Oh,
the daddy ran away from ICE and ran away. He got scared and ran off. So then they caught him and took both of them into custody. Oh, okay.
To go and be removed with his son. You know, now we're turning it out that ICE is arresting kids at schools, ICE is arresting kids at daycare. This 5-year-old's left out in the cold. Absolutely not.
Onto that protest now that disrupted a church service over the weekend. 3 people have been arrested. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey saying this is a gross abuse of power. The federal government is picking and choosing who to investigate, going after protesters and not the person who shot and killed one of our neighbors. I'm calling for Nikema to be released immediately. Nikema is one of the protesters who was arrested. No charges, though, have been filed against Don Lemon, who maintains that he was at the service as a journalist. Colleen Todd.
Madeline Rivera, thank you. With that, let us bring in Kendall Qualls, running for governor of Minnesota. And Kendall, we just heard from the mayor, but he doubled down on his defense of these violent protesters in his city. Listen.
What makes Minneapolis different is that we have an influx of 3,000 federal agents on our street, and we're not the size of New York City or Los Angeles. What makes us different is we're seeing constitutional violations play out in real time. What makes us different is, yes, we do have residents that are beautifully standing up, supporting their neighbors.
He refers to it as beautifully standing, but protesting in a church is unequivocally illegal. Literally, the law says you can't do that. Impeding ICE, unequivocally illegal. The law says you absolutely cannot do that. And yet you have these leaders like Jacob Frey, like Tim Walz, continuing to encourage people to commit illegal acts like this. Should they be charged with the crime?
Let's go, Cupcake. Return the kid to the
They should
family.
absolutely be charged. Obviously, they went in that church. Not only is it illegal, it's disgusting. And I call them cowards on a social media post because they never would have done something like that in a Muslim mosque. They targeted a Christian community. They've been targeting Christians in the state for the last 8 years, ever since COVID. That you can keep your casino open, but not your church. They sued basically Bible universities here, Christian universities.
All right, so hold on. We got something on the little one. They said that basically, and I'm gonna say that allegedly they saying that the kid came home from school, and ICE wanted to grab him to use him to lure out the dad that ran earlier. The boy had family inside the house trying to get him. Oh, wow. So a completely different version of events than what we just heard. So this occurred at a home, guys, where the daddy took off running on him, but at the same time, there were family inside the house. They tried to use the 5-year-old in order to lure out the dad who had ran from them earlier, and basically wound up taking both into custody. The child, once it got out of school, you know, and the father, I guess, when he came back, when the child had family inside the home. That's crazy.
Telling them that the students, any student that had to sign a pledge of faith, they wanted to sue them, that we had to take them to court on that issue. So the mayor mentioned that what makes them different here in Minnesota isn't any of the things he talked about. What makes us different is that we have 2 incompetent leaders leading the state with a resistance movement.
Hey, Kendall, what do you think about this day of protest that's going to be taking place across?
Oh, Kendall, you just trying to get that position as mayor. That's why you going against what Frey did. Oh, okay.
Your state today, that's the goal, and also to not go to school or not show up to work. Does that benefit anybody in your state?
Well, it benefits the socialists and Marxists that are leading the state. That's the only people it benefits, but it also does this. It distracts Minnesotans away from the $9 billion that we know of fraud. All of this is a distraction away from all of the mismanagement, the frauding, and the abuse of what the state has been through in the last few years under Tim Walz and Mayor Frey. Got to remember, these are the same men that allowed Minneapolis become a war zone for 4 days in 2020, and it's been going on now for far too long. We're ready to make a change. That's why I'm running. We needed an outsider politics to help clean up St. Paul, our capital.
Yeah, notice we're not talking about it anymore. That's likely by design. Before we let you go, I want to get your thoughts on this. House Oversight Committee now investigating how Ilhan Omar's family's net worth grew $30 million in 1 year, mainly through her husband's financial firm. Let's look at the finances here. In 2019, she entered Congress with a reported negative net worth.
Yeah, and Trump don't like her too much. You know, they've been on her top. I seen somebody come through earlier with that $20 super chat and basically say something about her getting this 30 million. I don't know how she went up 30 million. Your guess is as good as mine. But it says Rep. Ilhan Omar's finances under scrutiny. In 2019, 0 up to 30 million, guys. Wow. I don't know, man. What y'all think about that?
Then there was a reported change in household net worth from $42.44 up to $25 million from 2022 to 2023, all tied to her husband's political consulting firm, Rose Lake Capital, which does a lot of business with Democrat-aligned organizations. Do you find this surge in wealth to be out of the ordinary, Kendall?
Well, we have a state representative that basically has said that they've run this state like the mafia. They've given the Italian mafia a bad name based on what they've done in our state in Minnesota. Literally, I think she's only been in office 8 years. What a transformation. She's a refugee from another country. We saved her and her family's life, and she has the most ingratitude toward this country while reaping a $30 million net worth, having done nothing in the private sector.
Understood. Okay, Minnesota gubernatorial candidate Kendall Clausen, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
All right. So that 5-year-old situation just blew me away, man. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. And had family inside the house, still was taken into custody. What do you possibly plan to do with a 5-year-old? All right, so we heard from Vance, we heard from Fry, and we've heard, basically, and I showed y'all about the leader, the chief of ICE, getting chips poured on him right in Minnesota. Let's see what he had to say about all of this that's going on. Let's go.
The status of Operation Metro Surge. As you know, DHS has arrested over 10,000 illegal aliens in Minnesota in the past year and over 3,300 illegal aliens since we launched Operation Metro Surge on November 29th. But instead of discussing statistics, we're going to discuss it's important to know that there is a cost for everything, and the cost of Minnesota's sanctuary policies is steep. ICE is in the Twin Cities to remove criminal illegal aliens who have been released from jails and prisons despite the risks they pose to the public. The people we've arrested here are not people you want living next door to your families, your children, your parents, or your best friends. They're criminals like Salvadorian criminal illegal alien Carlos Antonio Flores.
Oh yeah, hold on, man. We need y'all to double tap that screen. We most definitely need to get the likes past 300. We need 20 more likes, guys. If you haven't double tapped that screen to hit that like button, that's how you do it if you're on a mobile device, or click the 3 dots in the right-hand corner. Hit that thumbs up, guys. It helps out the channel. If you liking what you're getting, double tap that screen if you're on a mobile device, or click those 3 dots, hit that thumbs up. As we listen to ICE, the agents in charge, basically tell us about how they feel about what's going on in Minnesota.
An MS-13 gang member and registered sex offender with a final order of removal from 2021. He was deported 4 times and convicted of illegal entry twice, and was charged with strong-arm rape and resisting an officer. Despite being arrested in El Salvador for robbery, the Biden administration released him in the United States in 2022. When we arrested him, he punched and kicked our officers and even attempted to grab an officer's gun. I don't know if it's up there, but this is our jump. This is the people that these protesters are protecting. We also arrested St. Lucian criminal illegal alien Nelbert Joseph, who has 11 criminal convictions, including larceny, stolen vehicle offenses, and has a final order of removal in 2023. We picked up Cuban criminal illegal alien Ivan Rodriguez Lopez, who has a final order of removal from 2018 and was convicted of assault, possession of methamphetamine, theft, and burglary. He also has prior charges for neglect or endangerment of a child and a DUI. These are the people protesters are protecting.
They like
We
showing
picked up
these
Cuban
pictures
criminal illegal alien. No, sorry, that's the wrong guy. Another one is a Laotian criminal illegal alien, Yao Li, who was convicted of second-degree murder. And a Mexican criminal illegal alien, Pedro Laguna Cruz, who has multiple DUI convictions and a conviction of possession of controlled substance. These are the people who the church agitators were protesting for. These are the people the violent agitators ramming our vehicles and attacking our officers are trying to defend. It's easy to debate immigration enforcement when it's abstract, but behind every one of these arrests is someone who committed a crime that put your friends, family, neighbors, community in danger. The public deserves to know exactly who ICE has taken off the streets and why we're here today. It's my responsibility to make sure everyone understands that ICE is only in this state to pick up the ball that local leadership has dropped. Today, I want to ask Governor Walz and Mayor Fry directly, please honor our immigration detainers that we've lodged against criminal illegal aliens in Minnesota, in the state's jails and prisons. Please work with us instead of against us. Please remember the victims whose voices are no longer here to speak for themselves.
Yeah, let's get past you to the man that got the chips
Please,
poured on.
Greg Bovino.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
All right, so this the chief right here that got the chips poured on him.
Well, good morning. I'm Greg Bovino, Commander at Large of Customs and Border Patrol Assets here in this great city of Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm glad to be here this morning. I'll make a few remarks and then we're going to open this up to questions. Please hold all questions until the end. Now, folks, we've seen the excellent work that Mr. Marcos Charles has detailed here. This excellent work on these screens here. Marcos, you and your team are out there every day, Border Patrol, ICE, and those allied teams, and they're taking these folks off the streets. These folks were walking the streets less than 24 hours ago. Marcos and his team and Border Patrol are taking them off the streets by the dozens and sometimes hundreds every single day. So that's some fantastic work. We want to continue to accomplish that work. But what I would like to touch upon this morning is how much better this work could be. How much better can we do what we do? And how much better for who? For you, which you being Ma and Pa America and the taxpayer, how much better this work can be for the taxpayer. Now, better to the citizens here of Minneapolis as well. Minneapolis.
He kind of sound like Ernest when he said that. Y'all know Ernest Saved Christmas. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Yeah, we're making this better for you and you. He kind of sounded like him when he said that. Let's go.
2020 riots. This most current influx of anarchists and folks that want to disparage and occlude this Title 8 law enforcement mission. So we can do this much better for the citizens of Minneapolis. And what this revolves around is the climate. The current climate surrounding law enforcement and this Title 8 mission in which ICE, Border Patrol, and these allied teams are fighting so hard to accomplish. Now, this climate that we talk about is not very favorable right now in Minneapolis. Let's put that as our first point. It's not very favorable to federal law enforcement here in Minneapolis. Let's take a look at what happened yesterday. Some of you may know that Border Patrol and ICE were out conducting our Title 8 mission, and several of our teams were set upon.
Yeah, you got
protesters,
chips.
anarchists,
Hold on you.
rioters, individuals, and extremists that were intent on ensuring that we did not take these very people that Marcos talked about off the streets. Intent that we would not arrest these individuals, these illegal aliens that prey upon Ma and Pa America every single day. So yesterday, I had the fortunate opportunity to once again work with those fine agents in ICE and Border Patrol. And in doing so, from the very beginning of the shift, all the way through the end of the shift, all day long, it was a running battle with those very extremists that I've talked about. So as we were looking to conduct that targeted enforcement against some very vile criminals, we were met with resistance. One of those criminals that we were after was Victor Urice. Mr. Victor Urice, a target that we were after yesterday. This individual is a convicted felon from Mexico with serious weapons offenses, fleeing from police, and a criminal rap sheet so long that I can't remember it all. That's who we were after yesterday. Now, as we were after Mr. Urice, we were set up on rioters who tried to stop us at every point yesterday. Simply using the restroom at a gas station was met with significant resistance. A lot of people would call that stalking. I don't think any of us would like to be stalked, but being stalked for 8 or 10 hours at a time is not a very favorable climate. Hey folks, where were the cops yesterday? Where was Minneapolis Police Department during that 8-hour stalking?
They already said they wasn't helping you guys. If you guys aren't going after violent people, they're not helping you. That's what they said.
Vance. Anybody care to venture a guess? I'd like to venture a guess, and it's I don't know. So it's that climate we're talking about. Violent mobs, rioters, who became violent towards the end of the day. Our very last stop at a gas station was met with violence. Individuals that perpetrated violence against our Border Patrol agents, forcing us to take action, not against Victor Urice, the individual that we were after, but to take action against those violent anarchists who didn't want us to catch Victor Urice, if you can believe that. Absolutely unbelievable. Hey, where were the cops during that 8 hours of stalking and violence? Where was Mayor Fry? Where was, I don't know, Governor Waltz? I didn't see him around anywhere. You know, there's a saying, I think Thomas Paine said that in one of his pamphlets, Common Sense. He said politics and politicians on their very best day are barely tolerable evil. Is this Mayor Fry's very best day yesterday? Oh, I don't think so. Absolutely not. So put yourselves as the media and the press there. Would you like to be stalked all day long with folks that want to hurt you?
Boy, he throwing that stalk out there.
Think about that. Also, I'd implore upon you to report that. We were forced to utilize less lethal devices again yesterday to keep the public safe, keep the Border Patrol agents safe, and so that we could continue to conduct that Title VIII mission. That's our job here. We're not going to be deterred in conducting the Title VIII mission, no matter what that climate is, no matter that violent rhetoric by Mayor Fry, Waltz, and others, individuals that come into churches, as Mr. Charles said. We're not going to be deterred from that. So CS gas, pepper balls, a whole litany of less lethal devices were used to ensure that our agents, those agitators and rioters, and the public were safe, and that we continue to conduct that mission. Citizens were failed twice yesterday. They were failed twice yesterday. First, as I said, the response from Minneapolis Police Department and other local agencies, missing in action. That's what you call missing in action. When fellow law enforcement officers are in need, missing in action. Unconscionable. And then the second part of that is these criminal illegal aliens that were let back out on the streets. Let's go back again to Mr. Victor Urice. He was on probation, by the way. Our target was on probation. He was let back go on the streets of Minneapolis so that we had to go into the community. Never should have happened. We had to go into the community to remove him. Why not, Mayor Fry, Governor Waltz, turn this individual over to us so we're not in the streets, so that anarchists are not allowed to ply their trade of anarchy against law enforcement? Now, this didn't happen overnight. This anarchist-type movement has been well established here in Minneapolis since 2020. We all know what happened in 2020. The anarchists love this, by the way. They love this. This is just what they want. This is just what Mayor Fry, Governor Walz, and others are giving them. This emboldened rhetoric vilifies law enforcement and creates very unsafe situations for law enforcement and occludes from the mission of taking these bad people, as Mr. Marcos Charles said, off the streets. Compliance, they think, is optional. Compliance is not optional, not when law enforcement conducts. It's legal, lawful, ethical, and moral duties. It's not optional. There is no option there. Let's get this straight. Do the anarchists want Victor Uribe to remain on the streets? I think that's the base question. Does Mayor Fry and Governor Walz? I've never heard them say a word about these violent, illegal aliens that roam their streets. I guess they want them there. But guess what? ICE, the U.S. Border Patrol, and those allied law enforcement agencies, President Trump, Secretary Noem, we don't want it and we won't have it. Law enforcement unquestionably is being targeted right now in Minneapolis. I'll close by saying that we're being targeted now in the Title VIII mission. What does this spread to in the future? That rule of law and order, what else will that spread to? Maybe some speeding tickets, or maybe another law or situation that someone doesn't agree with. It'll spread to that as well. We're not going to allow that to happen here in Minneapolis or anywhere else. We're here to stay the course. We will stay the course. U.S. Border Patrol, ICE, and all allied law enforcement agencies, we're here and we are going to accomplish the mission. I'm glad to be here. Our agents are ecstatic to be here. ICE agents are glad to be here. Removing that off the streets, it will continue. Thank you.
All right. So they were gonna go into questions, man. I don't want to hear the questions. I wanted y'all to hear what he had to say. You know what I'm saying? He says, "Hey, we love being here. We're gonna be here. We're gonna complete the mission." He threw a couple shots at Fry and Walz. You know, basically saying, "Where was the Minnesota police?" You know, when they were being stalked. He said that a lot. Stalked. He loved that word. All right. So I was telling y'all about the 5-year-old. We have updates on what happened with that 5-year-old that was detained by ICE, guys. Let's go here.
A child. Now let's look and hear from representatives in Minnesota.
This is about the 5-year-old child, guys, that was taken. Let's find out the details.
If we want to just say and spell our names, would that be helpful for you all? Yeah? All right.
Yeah. So Mark Prokosch, M-A-R-C, P-R-O-K-O-S-C-H. You probably figured that out because it's my law firm.
Zena Stenvik. My first name is spelled Z-E-N-A, last name S-T-E-N-V-I-K, and I'm the superintendent for Columbia Heights Public Schools.
Hi, my name is Mary Granlund, M-A-R-Y, G-R-A-N as in Nancy, L-U-N as in Nancy, D as in dog, and I am a school board chair.
All right, well, thank you all for coming. Thank you all for having such interest in this story. Again, my name is Mark Prokosch. This is my law firm, and Zena and Mary have joined me to talk about Liam and his dad. I have a few comments I'd like to talk about, and then Zena and Mary would, and then we'll open it up for some questions if you would like, which I'm assuming you will. And so I just want to talk a little bit about what happened and then go in from there. Zena and Mary may have more specific details about what happened since I came in the next day to look at the legal perspective of this. Back up a little bit as far as perspective. Liam and his dad did enter the United States at a port of entry to seek asylum through the CBP-1 app at the Brownsville border crossing. So they did everything right when they came in. They used the app, they made an appointment, they came to the border and presented themselves to Customs and Border Patrol. They've shared all of their information with the government, and they were following the process. They were just trying to secure safety and persecution for their family from their home country. But ICE didn't care about the fact that they had those pending claims and then just arrested them. And again, Zena and Mary can go through the details of that if you have questions about that. My big concern here is that, the fear that was generated, the terrorizing of the children and the community, that's just horrifying. But we've now learned through the help of Senator Tina Smith that Liam and his dad are in San Antonio, Texas at the Dilley facility. Any people that remembered the children in cages from 8 years ago, that's where the government holds family.
Wow.
We know that detaining children and families is wrong. Immigration violations are civil in nature, and so how can you justify incarcerating a child because of a civil violation, which again is not even accurate here because they entered lawfully through the CBP-1 program. And this family was not eluding ICE in any way. They were following all the established protocols, pursuing their claim for asylum, showing up for their court hearings, and posed no safety, no flight risk, and never should have been detained. A couple of things also that we'd like to make known. According to the Wall Street Journal, officers are being rewarded for making arrests, even if the immigrants are later released. So this is reprehensible. This is basically giving ICE officers that ability to just go pick anybody up because then they get their little bonus. So for years, we've been speaking out about the inhumane practice of detaining families seeking asylum. Detention of families, parents, children who pose no flight risk, no danger to the community, is simply inhumane and unacceptable. Family detention is harmful to children and their families. It inflicts mental health trauma, subjects people to inadequate medical care, and prevents them from accessing legal counsel. That's why they were flown down to Texas. Our laws are clear. If you express a fear of returning to your home country, you have the right to a credible fear screening, and if you pass the credible fear screening, you have a right to pursue your asylum claim before an immigration judge. And that's where we are at. We are in the process of pursuing our asylum claim. Being detained, it impedes their ability to work with their attorneys. It makes it more difficult to obtain the evidence that they need to support their claim, and finding expert witnesses and all of that help to support their claim. And lastly, just a couple of things about the ICE enforcement that we've been seeing in Minneapolis. Law enforcement operations, they must prioritize public safety and respect for civil rights. This rapid buildup of enforcement it's clearly sacrificed proper training, and there are diminished standards for the work being done. Putting armed personnel in the field with insufficient preparation, it just raises the likelihood that things are going to go badly. So we're urging lawmakers and agencies to review those policies governing enforcement actions. We must be avoiding targeting or endangering ordinary residents, immigrants, our friends, our neighbors. And we've seen what happens now. There have been multiple violent encounters, including these federal agents, and in multiple cities, and that's just not acceptable. And finally, we do recognize the need for immigration enforcement, but it must be measured, accountable, proportional, not endanger communities, and lawful. And with that.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Zena Stenvik, Superintendent for Columbia Heights Public Schools. A little bit about Columbia Heights Public Schools. We educate and care about all of our students. Our top priority is the safety of our students, staff, and their families. Our mission is to create worlds of opportunity for each and every learner where all belong and all succeed. Our focus is on educating our children, not politics. Everyone who passes through our doors is a valued member of our community. Over the last few weeks, ICE agents have been roaming our neighborhoods, circling our schools, following our buses, coming into our parking lots multiple times, and taking our kids. So over the last few weeks, I've kept my head down and focused just on supporting our school district, our families, our students, our staff. But as of this week, 4 of our students have been apprehended and taken away by masked and armed ICE agents with no identifying badges. So we decided it was time to speak up and share what's actually going on. The onslaught of ICE activity in our community is inducing trauma and is taking a toll on our children, taking a toll on our families, our staff, our community members. This surge has changed nearly everything about our daily lives. It's clear to me that there are multiple paths immigrants take legally to live and work in the United States, such as sponsorship, seeking asylum, refugee status, or temporary work permit, among others. You're the expert. The young boy Liam and his father, who were taken yesterday, have the documentation. I saw it with my own eyes when I visited the home. With that, I'll turn it over to Chair Granlund.
Oh, wow. So they're talking about the 5-year-old, basically his parents having the correct paperwork, guys.
Thank you. Hi, thank you all so much for being here. My name is Mary Grandlin, and I serve as a school board chair for Columbia Heights Public Schools. Our city is known as a city of peace and was named an All-American City in 2016. We are a small working class community. I've lived there for almost 20 years, and it's a pretty great place to live. And our children should not continue to be surrounded by masked agents brandishing large guns in our neighborhoods and at their bus stops. We want to thank our community and the staff for all of the extra time and energy they've been dedicating to our impacted students and their families on top of their everyday duties. We're lucky to live in a place where the community has wrapped their collective arms around our neighbors. From elected officials to clergy to teachers to community leaders to moms and dads and uncles and aunts and big brothers and big sisters and our local police department and first responders. Everybody has worked really hard to continue to make Columbia Heights as safe as it can be during this time. But we've also learned who keeps us safe, we keep us safe. The sense of safety in our community and around our schools is shaken, and our hearts are shattered. And honestly, at the end of the day, children should be in school with their classmates. And we want to focus on the purpose of educating our children. That is why we are here. That is why I was elected. Our schools and communities must be safe places for children and families to thrive. And we need a diplomatic pathway out of this situation. And we are seeking a peaceful resolution, and we need your help. Because at the end of the day, we have whistles and they have guns.
Thank you. We'll take time for some questions now, and if you can, ask who you're directing the questions to. Again, Mark, Mary, Zena, so that we can each respond appropriately.
Mark, can I ask you a couple of things? One is, I wanted to just put in your ear, I don't know if you heard this, what J.D. Vance said and the way he described what happened with this family.
Let's go.
He said that he went and looked up and researched what happened. He said, what I found was that a 5-year-old was not arrested, that his dad was an illegal alien, and then they went to arrest his illegal alien father, and the father ran. So the story is that ICE detained a 5-year-old. Well, what were they supposed to do? Are they supposed to let a 5-year-old child freeze to death? That's how he describes what happened.
That's what JD said.
Well, first of all, what I'll do is we'll tag team on this answer. So I will answer that. As I said, these are not illegal aliens. They came properly, they came legally and are pursuing.
Oh, they said they are not illegal aliens. Remember, the teacher said she seen the proper paperwork when she went to their house. So basically they saying JD is lying. We need 6 more likes, man, to be at 400. If you haven't double tapped that screen to click those dots, 3 dots in the right hand corner and hit the thumbs up, man, do so now. And most definitely subscribe to the channel if you're new.
a legal pathway. So that's just not accurate. As far as what actually happened, I'll turn it over to Mary.
So I was on my way to get my own children from school, and I heard the commotion and saw all the people. And as I got out of my car and came around the corner, I heard, "What are you doing? Don't take the child." His mom, like, there are people here that can take him. There was another adult who lived in the home that was there saying, "I will take the child. I will take the child." Somebody else.
There were other people in the house that said, "I will take the child. I will take the child." So ICE didn't have to take the baby into custody. Okay, now this is getting good.
Was yelling, they saw that I was there and said, "School is here. They can take the child. You don't have to take them." And there was ample opportunity to be able to safely hand that child off to adults. And mom was there. She saw out the window, and dad was yelling, "Please do not open the door. Don't open the door," because of the other picture that I'm sure you've seen, where there's a little boy knocking at the door with an ICE agent looming over him.
And the second question,
which confirms what they said about ICE using the little boy as bait, guys, to lure out the father. So your son comes home from school, 5 years old, is knocking on the door to get in, and ICE is standing right behind him, waiting on you to open the door so they can come in. Oh, okay, I see now.
Are you accusing ICE of using children as bait?
Hey, positive vibes.
Yes, I mean it's very clear from the pictures, from the videos, from firsthand accounts.
They used the little boy as bait.
This is what happened.
Yeah. One thing we know to be true, because again, we've had 4 students taken, and at least one of our...
They have taken 4 students from this school, guys. That's crazy. This is crazy, y'all. I ain't gonna lie. Why did y'all not just leave that little boy alone? Leave the boy with, at least with the family if you was getting a daddy. Or let the teachers take him. They saying they had paperwork. What is really going on, man?
Like one of our 17-year-old students who was taken, when she cracked open the door, the agents pushed their way in and then apprehended the child and whoever was else in the apartment. So it's been, unfortunately, over the last few weeks, pretty common knowledge about not opening doors because they're pushing their way in, or I'm sure you've all seen multiple examples of like not tearing down doors, which is something that we had happen in Columbia Heights today at a home of 5 of our children.
Mark, just be clear, have you had any contact with the boy or his father since they were taken into custody?
We've not had direct contact. We've had indirect contact. We've been trying to set up calls with the Dilley facility.
It's in Minneapolis,
but it's
Minnesota.
Notorious to get that call time. So we're working on it, and we've had indirect contact.
And just to clarify, were you working with this family on their asylum case before this incident, or were you just called in after the incident?
I was just called in afterwards. I've been working on this for 36 hours.
Mark, can you tell us whether the father and son, do you know from the conversations you've had with Senator Smith or other, whether they're being held together or if they've been separated at the facility?
I believe that they're being held together because that's the point of the Dilley facility. It's a family holding center. But I can't 100% confirm that, but I believe that they are together.
For the superintendent, DHS is pretty forcefully online responding to articles both locally and from international outlets that are taking your words about the situation and calling those journalists, and by extension you, liars about this incident. To the best of your knowledge, do you know if their version of events is accurate in the idea that Dad ran away when ICE was there and Liam was left alone in the driveway?
So I haven't seen any of those articles at this point, so I don't have that background. I will say there were when I arrived on scene shortly after Mary was there were several people on scene. So when I exited my vehicle, I immediately said, "Where's the child? Where's the child?" That's what I was there to do.
Not
is
right
to collect
now.
the child and return them safely to school.
I will not.
And
it's
so
just gonna have to do for right now.
There were people there videotaping.
It'll be clean next
I wasn't there.
next stream.
I would perhaps. Our local officers in Columbia Heights Public Schools, they all wear body cams. So perhaps the ICE agents could they could share their body cams or review their body cams, and they can actually.
They do got chicken pox, Cupcake.
So we have photo. There are bystanders there. We have video.
Follow-up question to that. DHS in a statement said that the mom refused to accept custody of the child and that the dad insisted that the child go with him. Have you had any communication?
They got measles too,
Cupcake.
Cupcake.
She did say she wanted to keep the child, or if what DHS is saying is true that she refused to accept custody of the child in this situation?
So when we entered the home, it was really to provide support to the mom. She was obviously very distraught, very terrified. It wasn't an interview type situation for her. We were just there to provide support. I've heard that the father perhaps, I've heard that there's accusations that he perhaps fled. Everything I've heard is that he was handcuffed in the driveway. And what we saw when we arrived on scene was the father's car in the driveway still running. So
they got moles too, Cupcake.
And then just a quick question for Mark. You said that they legally came to the United States, are applying for asylum. What year was that when they came to the U.S.?
2024.
Is that the entire family or just Dad and Liam?
Well, right now I'm focused on Dad and Liam.
And where originally are they from?
I'm sorry?
Where are they from?
Ecuador.
Question for each of you, if it's okay. Mary, if I can start with you. Nicole Scango with CBS National News. It sounds like you were saying school is here when you first saw ICE agents taking the father into custody. Were you agreeing to accept the child, and can you describe the scene in which other adults were ready and able to take that child?
For sure. So when I arrived, another community member, again, we're a very small community, so we know our neighbors very well. And somebody else saw me and said to the agents, "School is here. The school is here. They can take him." And I said, "Yes, I'm here. I am here. I can help with that."
You offered to take.
So she was willing to take the baby with her, guys, just so the baby didn't have to go to the facility. What a kind woman she was for that.
And you saw ICE agents drive away with
Yes.
the 5-year-old boy.
Yes. And then I held another community member in their front yard sobbing.
Liam's
Did they
mother
say
was
anything to
inside
you?
the house.
Did they, when you asked them why they were doing that, did they say anything, talk to you?
So, I don't remember if they did say anything back to me. There was a lot of yelling, and there was a lot of people, making a commotion. And so all I can speak to is the part that specifically that I heard and my response
Sorry
to
to
that.
clarify, Liam's mother was inside the house.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay,
Did she say she wanted her child? Was she clearly, obviously saying, just leave him with me?
Again, I was not at that door when that was, as they were putting him in the vehicle and leaving.
Question for Mark. DHS officials have said that the father abandoned this child. How does that differ from what your understanding is? You said that they were being held at Dilley. What is your understanding of the conditions in which they're being held? Do you know if Adrian Conejo...
I don't know about abandoning the child. If the child had just got out of school and was in the process of knocking on the door, when the baby got home, and I standing right behind the baby trying to get the dad. I don't know if they abandoned them. Now the story that I heard at first, had me like, okay, he abandoned them. He took off running and left the child. Okay, that sounds like abandonment. But if the baby was coming home from school and was knocking on the door to get into the house, and people were inside of the house saying, okay, you can have the dad. We'll just, give us the baby. We'll keep the baby. I don't see that as being abandonment, guy. I don't think nobody abandoned him. I don't know.
Has any sort of criminal record to speak of? I understand you were saying he was in the asylum process.
Sure, I'll take those in reverse order. To my knowledge, I had looked through the Minnesota criminal database and found nothing. So no, there's no crimes here that the family has ever done. And just to go back, so they are...
Well, they said the dad was a violent criminal. The lawyer says he checked the backgrounds of all the family, and they have committed no crimes. Uh-oh.
And Dilly is a family detention center, and I don't know the exact conditions. We have people that are going to be going and trying to visit them there to
You
check
think they're being held together, but you don't know for sure.
Correct. I do not know for sure. I'm assuming so because the federal regulations require that. So I just have to assume that they are following those regulations.
And just lastly, for Zena, you described how 4 different children have now been taken into custody by ICE from your school district.
Correct.
What is the feeling right now among students, among parents? Among
You saying a family detention center, not jail? That dude, the lawyer, just got up there and said in that facility where they, the family facility you speak of, they were holding people in cages. Sounds like jail to me. I'm just saying.
teachers, and can you describe the scenes that you alluded to earlier of ICE agents in parking lots and circling school buses?
Sure. ICE agents came onto our property, our high school property, yesterday afternoon when we were preparing to speak. And obviously we have school district video of that. My understanding is they were on site for about 10 minutes. And what they did is they came into our parking lot and then went into, we have an enclosed loading dock. So you sort of have to go under a portion of the building, which they did, to an enclosed loading dock. There were some staff members out there, some admin, who spoke with them and asked them if they had any business there. And eventually they left after about 10 minutes though. And so unfortunately, right above that loading dock, there's a large bank of windows, and a lot of our students were up there and saw it. And so I think there's a video, some student put something on social media. Yes, because it happened during passing time. So students were in the hallway.
A question for Mark. What are the odds that they're able to come home even if they, continue to face some sort of legal scrutiny over their asylum case?
So we're looking at our legal options to see if we can free them either through some legal mechanism or through moral pressure. So we're hopeful. We have to be hopeful.
Mark, is the mother, did she not come out because she was concerned she would be grabbed by ICE, or do you?
I would presume that, yes.
Mark, I just have a question for you and then the superintendent.
All right, this was the response live. We were bringing it to you from the school district's point of view, as well as an attorney representing the school district. Want to give you a look here of the photo that was
that's the 5-year-old, guys.
5-year-old Adrian. Adrian.
Poor baby, guys.
And was also
poor
picked
baby
up here in this ICE surge in Minnesota, and the school district says 4 students so far in the past weeks have been picked up by ICE agents. The Democrats put this out on X, saying in Minneapolis, ICE arrested a 5-year-old coming home from preschool and tried to use him as human bait. His teacher describes him as a bright young student. These monsters are sick. And here is the
that's what the Democrats put out.
ICE on X, saying 5 months ago.
This is what ICE did put out.
To paint the same picture they're so desperately trying to paint now. They lied and claimed ICE detained a 5-year-old. That was a lie then, and it's a lie now. Both children were abandoned by their criminal, illegal parent who put the child's life in danger by leaving her behind and fleeing. Lies like this discredit the work of our brave men and women of DHS who are enforcing federal immigration laws. This is another response here from the White House putting this out on X, saying, I do a little bit more follow-up research, and what I find is that the 5-year-old was not arrested. Then his dad was an illegal alien, and when they went to arrest his illegal alien father, the father ran, and they supposed to let a 5-year-old child freeze to death. That was from Vice President J.D. Vance in his, that was the first question that he received today when he was talking about ICE surges in Minneapolis and Minnesota. So we are definitely going to be keeping an eye on everything related to Minnesota.
That's crazy, guys. All right, so we getting 2 different versions of events when it comes to this 5-year-old, guys. I'm going to just tell y'all like this. I understand everything they saying. They saying, well, the baby wasn't arrested, but the baby is in a family detention center or whatever with the father. When the mother and other individuals who could have took the child in, including the school, one of the teachers was willing to take the baby. To me, they most definitely arrested the baby if it's with the father in the detention center. That's just me. Even though they may not have said it in the paperwork, if the baby is there, the baby is with the father. If the father is under arrest and being detained, and so is the baby if the baby is there. 5 years old, that's uncalled for. I don't care what none of y'all say. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but I most definitely don't see that as being right. Could have most definitely let that baby go with the teachers, or even with the mother and the other siblings that were in the house that could have took care of that baby. This is just crazy, y'all. Just another situation with the mass deportation situation, guys. It's looking like it's going to be a lot of unrest. Like I said, we heard different versions of events from different people, including the White House had a different version of events. But I'm not going to lie to y'all. I believe the school teachers' versions of events more than I believe J.D. Vance version of events when it comes to this 5-year-old. This is sad, guys. This is sad. I don't care what side you're on, Democrat, Republican, you vote for Trump, you don't like Trump, whatever. This don't make no sense, guys. Now, they basically said that the family had the paperwork, the proper paperwork that they needed in order to be able to be in America as American citizens. It was just a couple of more little things they had to do, but they came in the right way. For all of my people who say, well, arrest them, it's a crime, they came in wrong. You should have not jumped the fence. Or well, they didn't jump the fence. They did what they were supposed to do. And now that this mass deportation situation is going on, now they have to find other methods, I guess, in order to get their citizenship completed, if they're going to get it. They said the father was violent. We sit here and heard the attorney basically say he checked the father's background, and the father nor any of the individuals in the home, as far as the family, have committed any crimes. They're not violent, illegal aliens, like what's been put out. It's crazy. It's crazy, I know. But we heard what J.D. Vance had to say. He said that basically the father used the child. Well, no, he didn't use him. He abandoned the child. They're saying that ICE used the kid as bait for the father or whoever inside the house to come out. That's the other side of the fence. This is crazy, y'all. We heard what ICE had to say, regarding their being in Minnesota, basically saying they stand there until the mission is complete. They don't care what they have to endure or go through. They will most definitely not be leaving anytime soon, even though Fry, basically came on and rebuked pretty much everything that J.D. Vance said, and basically said, hey, our law enforcement officials will not be helping y'all, mess with ordinary, everyday citizens. If you got some criminals, really, some unalivers or something like that, thank you for the gift, some unalivers or somebody that's breaking the law, we'll most definitely help y'all. But if y'all are going to just terrorize the citizens of Minneapolis, we're not doing it, and we're not having any parts, and we're not going to help you. So, hey, it looked like Minnesota is at a standstill when it comes to this ICE situation, man. Nobody's willing to budge at this time. It looked like it might get worse before it get better, man. I knew this mass deportation situation was a bad idea from the jump. I knew this was going to happen. I said it. I predicted it. Now look at it, guys. It's crazy. Thank you for that gift, man. You know what I'm saying? So I most definitely walked down everything in the title. I showed y'all J.D. Vance and what he had to say. I showed y'all what ICE had to say. And I most definitely showed y'all about this 5-year-old. So my mission of bringing across this information it's done. You know what I'm saying? I hope y'all enjoyed the show. If you have not, double tap that screen, hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're new. This is Everything News, where I keep y'all updated on everything I see that catches my attention in the news, guys. I hope y'all enjoyed the show once again. Shout out to, thank you, Karen. Shout out to all of my subscribers, the new one as well as the old ones. Shout out to all of my members, man. Memberships are available on this channel. If you go to my home page, it most definitely have a spot where you can press join to join the channel, you know, become a member, support the channel, or you can check the description box. The link to the memberships is most definitely in the description box. There's a lot of information on this channel for you guys who are new. If you're looking to catch up on everything that's been going on, check out a couple of the other live streams, man. Most definitely hit the like button on those as well. Shout out to once again my members, the new ones as well as the old ones, and shout out to all of my moderators, guys. Sometimes I don't know what I do without y'all. Y'all know it get crazy over here with all these opinions going through the chat, and sometimes it gets a little crazy, and yeah, man, I be needing y'all. So shout out to y'all and the great job that y'all do keeping this page running smoothly, man. You know what I'm saying? I most definitely appreciate each and every one of y'all. And with that being said, Sidewalk Gang, checking out. I'll catch y'all on the next one. You know, if you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe to the channel, man. And with that being said, I'm gone. Y'all have a great day. I'll see y'all later.